I trained a new hire for months. She called me old model and told HR I'd been hostile. I got reassigned. She got my office. She didn't know I was still logged into her work chat. She didn't know I'd seen every drunk message about her sleeping her way in. And she definitely didn't know I had screenshots ready for a PowerPoint called. I started at that company when my son was still in preschool. Now he's in college. I built everything from scratch: processes, templates, training decks, vendor relationships. I was never flashy. I don't kiss up or try to be everyone's favorite. I just did my job. Quietly, reliably. For 17 years. They started talking about modernizing last year. Said we needed fresh perspectives, new energy. I was told I'd be mentoring a new hire, Alina. She was 25, smart, confident, always perfectly dressed. People called her a rock star before she even knew what half our systems were. She was assigned to shadow me. For weeks, she barely understood what she was doing, and that was okay. I didn't expect her to. I walked her through our backend structure, explained why certain clients needed more handholding, gave her my own documentation, stuff I had spent years building and refining. She didn't even say thank you, just nodded, acted like it was owed to her. Still, I gave her everything I had. I trained her on how to respond to internal escalations. I explained budget protocols and how to avoid triggering finance reviews. She didn't absorb it well. She took shortcuts. She started skipping steps, assuming she knew better. And when those shortcuts led to errors, I fixed them. Quietly, without going to our boss. I didn't want her to get in trouble. I thought that was what mentorship meant, making space for someone to grow. But she didn't grow. She just got cocky. The shift was gradual. She stopped asking questions. She started changing files without telling me. She'd rename things, delete rows, confuse tracking sheets. I'd bring it up gently, and she'd say, "Oh, I thought it was outdated." No apology, just dismissal. She started talking differently in meetings. Cut me off once during a client call and said, "I think we're moving away from the old method." The client was confused. I was blindsided. Afterward, I pulled her aside and said she needed to run changes by me. She shrugged and said, "I figured you'd want to start stepping back anyway." Stepping back. Like I was already halfway out the door. I brought it up with my manager, Greg. He waved it off, said maybe I was reading too much into it. Told me I was an anchor for the team and that she was just finding her voice. I felt like I was being told to stay quiet, that I was being managed out without anyone saying it. Then came the HR complaint. I was called into a meeting, just me and a woman from HR I had never met before. She said they had some concerns about how I was treating Alina, that she reported I was being unwelcoming, undermining her work, and making her feel unsafe. I asked for examples. She said they couldn't share specifics. I wasn't fired. I was reassigned. They said it was about team cohesion. They gave my accounts to Alina. They moved her into my office. She posted a photo of her new desk on LinkedIn with the caption claiming my space. I had to ask admin to get my things, my framed photo of my son, a coffee mug my wife gave me, a stack of old notebooks I kept for reference. They were shoved in a cardboard box like I had died. I was moved to a cubicle near the printer. No real tasks. No team. Just busy work. That's when I remembered the backup laptop. When I first trained Alina, I helped her sync her work chat account across devices. She didn't know it, but that old backup laptop still had her chat credentials saved. I opened it, half out of curiosity, half out of bitterness. I didn't expect to find much. What I found made me sick. She had a private group chat with another coworker, Jason, a manager from sales. The thread went back months. Drunk messages, laughing about how easy it was to manipulate leadership. She said, "I told Greg I was feeling unsafe, and he practically begged me to file something." Jason responded, "Told you HR loves mental health complaints. They'll never question it." There were worse ones. "Sleeping my way in is way more efficient than onboarding. Once I get his office, I'll be untouchable." I told him I didn't know how to make pivot tables, and he offered to do them for me. LMAO. And it wasn't just Jason replying. Other coworkers chimed in, laughing, making comments, egging her on. One said, "You're doing God's work getting that guy out. He's like a haunted fax machine." Another, "He trained you too well." They made fun of my clothes, my haircut, called me analog. She said she was rebranding the whole department now that the dinosaur's gone. I read it all. Then I read it again. And I started saving screenshots, chat logs, downloaded the audio messages she sent at 1 a.m., slurring her words. I collected over 130 screenshots. I created a folder and labeled it Redemption. Then I built the presentation. It took 2 weeks. I worked on it in silence. Each slide laid out the facts. Her own words, side by side with dates, project files, timestamps, and HR policies. There were slides just showing her messages next to the timeline of her complaint. Screenshots of her admitting she lied. Messages about deleting documents. Screenshots where Jason said he'd cover for her if shit hits the fan. I didn't rush it. I wanted her to feel safe. Like she had won. I wanted her to feel proud, sitting in my old office, spinning around in my old chair. I sat at my cubicle every day, pretended I was updating spreadsheets. She'd walk past, sometimes smirking. One time she said, "Still here?" I just looked at her. Then came the Monday before quarterly review. 8:03 a.m. I sent the PowerPoint. To HR. To legal. To our VP. CC'd Greg too. Then I shut the laptop. Packed my stuff. Walked out. I didn't quit. I just let the truth work in silence. I expected silence. Maybe emails. Maybe someone from HR would reach out and say they were looking into it. Instead, by lunchtime that same Monday, 2 people from IT were seen removing Alina's laptop from her desk. Someone said she looked confused. Then she left for the day and never came back. No one said anything to me directly. But the shift was fast. Greg stopped showing up in the office. The VP sent out a company-wide email about a compliance review. HR scheduled mandatory ethics meetings. Then, a week later, Jason's name disappeared from the sales org chart. Just gone. Still, no one said my name. I stayed quiet. Did my work. Ate lunch alone. I waited for someone to talk to me, to apologize, to explain. But most people avoided eye contact. A few coworkers started being polite. Not warm. Just cautious. One woman from finance left a post-it on my desk that said, "Just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't know." That was the only acknowledgement I got. Then, Alina's name hit the industry forums. Someone anonymously leaked parts of the PowerPoint. Not the whole thing. Just enough to stir rumors. The sleeping with managers stuff. The bragging. The voice message where she laughs and says, "I could burn this place down and still get a raise." People outside the company started whispering. A former vendor emailed me and said, "Is that the same Alina who used to be in training?" I just read something wild. I said nothing. Then Greg resigned. The email said he was pursuing new opportunities. But I heard from someone in HR that legal gave him a choice: resign quietly or face internal disciplinary action tied to neglect of process and retaliatory reassignment. Turns out, the PowerPoint exposed that he knew her complaint was baseless before he passed it to HR. She told him it was just to get space to lead. He joked about it. I had the screenshot. I didn't even have to twist the knife. Their own words did it. But here's where it turned. HR asked me to come in for a private meeting. They said they wanted to understand the full scope of the events. The room had a new director in it. Legal rep too. They kept using the word concerned. I kept asking one thing. Why didn't anyone ask me before reassigning me? They had no answer. Asked if my record would be corrected. They said yes, but quietly. They offered me a severance package. I said no. They offered me my old position back. Office, team, portfolio. I said no. Because by then, something had shifted in me. I didn't want my old life back. Not really. I didn't want to sit in that office and look at the same walls, pretending everything hadn't happened. I didn't want to manage people who had watched me be humiliated, and said nothing. And more than that, I had started digging deeper. Because after seeing what Alina had gotten away with, I wondered who else had done the same. So, I started pulling records, document trails, HR complaint logs, internal reassignments from the last 5 years. What I found made me sick all over again. There was a pattern. Other employees, mostly older, pushed out after vague complaints. Most of them left quietly. Some got demoted. One man, Marcus, had worked there for 22 years. He was suddenly moved into an admin assistant role and left within 3 months. I emailed him. We met for coffee. He told me he'd filed a retaliation complaint that mysteriously got lost in the system. No one followed up. He still had the emails. He gave them to me. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about Alina. It never had been. Marcus wasn't the only one. After I met with him, I reached out to a few other names I remembered. People who used to be senior, respected, and then suddenly vanished. Some replied. Some didn't. But enough did. They told me stories that were too familiar, being labeled difficult, or stuck in their ways. Younger hires getting fast-tracked after whisper campaigns. Cultural misfit, used as code for anyone who questioned shady behavior. One woman, Priya, had been accused of creating a negative atmosphere because she pushed back on a team lead's budget misuse. Her complaint went nowhere. She was gone in 2 months. She still had her exit interview notes. She gave them to me. I started a private folder. I wasn't even thinking about revenge at first. I just wanted to understand how deep it went. But the more I found, the angrier I got. These weren't isolated cases. This was a pattern: quiet removals, silent cover-ups, protecting favorites, punishing the people who didn't play along. I asked myself, how did Alina know she could get away with it? Then I remembered Jason. I pulled his email records. He'd been quietly CC'd on a lot of HR messages, not just related to Alina, others too. I asked a friend in IT, someone I'd helped years ago when he was an intern, to look at metadata. He told me Jason had access to internal complaint logs. That shouldn't have been possible. Jason's sister-in-law worked in HR. That's when it all started to click. Alina had never been smart about processes. She barely understood how our systems worked, but she was smart about people. She'd gotten close to Jason, and Jason had inside access through family ties. That's how she knew which complaints worked, which keywords to use. That's why she was so confident. She was coached. This wasn't just Alina manipulating one manager. This was a pipeline. A small group of people using HR complaints as tools to replace experienced staff with people they liked or people they could control. I kept digging. And then I found a deleted shared drive folder. My friend from IT recovered the archive. It was full of old complaint drafts. Some were nearly identical, word for word. Swapped names, same structure, same phrases. Feeling unsafe, unapproachable energy, stifled innovation. These weren't personal statements. They were templates. Someone had been coaching employees on how to get rid of others. That's when I stopped collecting evidence and started building something bigger. Not for HR, not for my boss, not for anyone inside the company. I started writing everything out like a case file. Not just Alina, all of them, with timelines, evidence, connections, a flowchart showing how it worked, the coaching, the outcomes, the quiet exits. I gave it a name, the Clean Slate Protocol. Sounded corporate enough to be real. Sounded sinister enough to make someone panic. I wasn't ready to use it yet. But I knew one thing. If I had to walk away from 17 years of loyalty, I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I didn't sleep much during that time. I'd come home, eat in silence, sit at the kitchen table while my son studied in the next room. He'd ask if everything was okay. I'd lie and say yes. But in my head, I kept building the Clean Slate Protocol. It became more than a file. It became a map of every lie, every setup, every pattern. I had names, dates, timelines, and even internal calendar invites showing suspicious overlap. Exit interviews cut short. Transfers announced hours after HR complaints were filed. I added a section called Survivors. People like me. People who stayed quiet. One had been demoted. Another took a pay cut to stay under the radar. They all had stories that lined up. I met some of them in coffee shops, others over Zoom with their cameras off. They shared emails, screenshots, timelines. Some of them cried. They thought no one would believe them. I told them I did. That's when one of them, Daniel from operations, told me something I hadn't expected.
He said there were whispers about me.
Not just now, but from months back. Apparently, when I started training Alina, someone told her I was hard to work with. That I struggled to adapt. It was Jason who said it. She'd gone into the mentorship already thinking I was the problem. It hit me like a punch. That meant this didn't start with Alina. She wasn't the origin. She was just the next one in a long line. So I started watching the job postings. And that's when I saw it. A role popped up, Director of Innovation Strategy. Same responsibilities as my old job, but the title was higher. And it reported directly to the VP. They were building a new org, one that looked a lot like the one I built from scratch. Only now it was going to be led by someone fresh. I checked the internal referrals list. Alina's name was still there, marked as pending return. HR had kept her in the system. They hadn't removed her. She wasn't fired. She was being repositioned. That's when I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I booked a meeting. Not with HR. Not with Greg, he was gone. Not even with legal. I reached out directly to the board. I used their formal feedback channel, normally reserved for shareholders and executive concerns. I submitted a report called Internal Ethics and Retaliation Systems Failure. Attached to it was the clean slate protocol. I stripped all the personal emotion out of it. No commentary, just data.
Slides. Quotes.
Evidence. It was written like an audit. 10 days passed. No reply. Then on a Thursday morning, I got a calendar invite. No subject. Just a Zoom link. From a private address. When I clicked it open, there were 6 people on the call. 2 were board members. 1 was from external compliance. And 1 was someone I never thought I'd see again. Her name was Erica. She'd been our HR director 5 years ago, before she mysteriously left for a better role. She looked at me and said quietly, "I've been waiting for someone to bring this forward." That's when I realized this wasn't just a system flaw. It was a cover-up. A long, careful, institutional cover-up. And I had just ripped the lid off it. Erica didn't smile when she said it. She looked tired, like she'd been carrying something for years. I hadn't heard her name since she left. People said she got poached by a bigger firm. Now I knew that was only half true. She said, "I raised red flags back then, got pushed out." The board members didn't respond. They just listened. I kept my voice calm. I walked through the clean slate protocol slide by slide. I showed them the reused complaint templates, the metadata from the deleted folders, the timestamps matching promotions and exits, the LinkedIn posts, the chats, the voice notes. Every word was from them. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't twist anything. They asked questions. How I got the data. Why I waited. I told them I thought it was just about me at first. I didn't know how far it went. Until I did. One of them, a woman named Ruth, leaned in and asked, "Do you believe this is still happening right now?" I said, yes. Because I had proof of 2 current managers coaching junior hires. One message said, "The complaint angle works best if you say you feel emotionally stifled." Another said, "Use the word unsafe. HR loves that." This wasn't old. It was happening right now. The board said they needed time to review the materials. They asked if I'd be willing to speak with internal audit. I said yes. They ended the call. 3 days later, internal audit emailed me. They asked for everything. I sent it. That same week, HR sent out a company-wide memo. Temporary freeze on internal promotions and restructures pending policy review. They used vague language. Most people thought it was just about budgets.
But I knew.
A few days after that, Jason's employee profile disappeared entirely. Not deactivated. Deleted. And Alina? She still hadn't been removed, but her referral was marked on hold. Her name dropped off the innovation strategy project. Her mentor listing vanished. I checked the shared HR directory. It said she was on extended administrative leave. No one said it out loud, but I heard from someone in legal. They were afraid of a lawsuit. Because if they let her back in now, after seeing the evidence, it would be proof that they supported it all along. Then one of the younger hires reached out. A woman I barely knew. She said she had just started 6 months ago, and she'd felt pressure to file a complaint against another senior employee. She said she'd been told by someone in her mentorship circle that it would help her stand out. She didn't go through with it. But now she was scared she'd be blamed anyway. She asked me, should I tell someone? I told her, yes. Tell them everything. That's when I realized this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was turning into something else. A cleanup. But I still hadn't decided what I would do next. I wasn't looking for a promotion. I didn't trust anyone enough to accept one. Part of me wanted to walk away. Quietly. Let the truth finish its work. But part of me wanted to finish it myself. Because they still hadn't said sorry. Not to me. Not to Marcus. Not to Priya. Or Daniel. Or any of the people they quietly erased. They just wanted it to go away. And I wasn't sure I'd let them off that easy. I spent one more month at the company. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to watch the house burn down from the inside. The internal audit became public within 2 weeks. Not because the board wanted it to, but because someone inside leaked it to a journalist who specialized in workplace ethics. I didn't know who leaked it. Maybe it was Erica. Maybe someone from legal. Didn't matter. It was out. The article hit fast. Big headline. Bigger fallout. Pattern of targeted complaints used to force out older workers at TechCo. They didn't use my name.
But they used my slides.
They quoted direct messages. Showed screenshots from Alina's chat. Voice-to-text transcription of her laughing about deleting my files. Even the line where she joked about sleeping her way in made the article. My phone started buzzing nonstop. Some messages were support. A few were from old co-workers I hadn't heard from in years. Others were from strangers. People from other companies. Some said the same thing was happening at their workplace. That my story gave them the push to finally speak up. But inside the company, things were falling apart. The head of HR was suspended. Internal audits uncovered that over a dozen complaints were altered before being filed. Keywords added to trigger automatic investigations. Jason's sister-in-law was named directly.
Fired.
Greg? He lost his job at the new firm he joined. Turns out they didn't like hiring managers accused of overseeing retaliation systems. His name made it into the article. So did his quote about giving her space to lead. I heard he tried to sue for defamation. It didn't go anywhere. As for Alina, she went silent. Her LinkedIn was wiped. Her Instagram went private. Someone found a copy of her old resume still on the company's shared drive. I saved it just to remind myself. They didn't bring her back. They couldn't. Because by then there were 3 lawsuits pending from ex-employees who had been pushed out under the same patterns. Marcus was one of them. So was Priya.
Me?
I declined the offer to stay. The board came to me formally this time. They offered me the director role. A full apology. Public reinstatement. Back pay. Even stock. I said no. Not because I wanted to punish them, but because it would have meant pretending none of it happened. Smiling in meetings. Working next to people who only acted right when they got caught. Instead, I did something else. I used everything I learned, every file, every pattern, every tactic, and started consulting. Quietly. For people like me. For people who were forced out, lied about, pushed aside. I called it Old Guard Advisory. First client was Marcus. Second was a woman from another tech company who read the article and said, I thought I was going crazy. Your story felt like mine. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was correction. Real justice, slow and painful. And when I finally left the office on my last day, after cleaning out my cubicle and wiping down the desk that used to be mine, I passed Alina's old office. It was empty. Just a chair. The blinds were half open. Sunlight cutting across the carpet. Before I left, I pinned a note to the door. It said, "Trained for it. Survived it. Exposed it. No name. No anger. Just truth." And for the first time in a year, I walked out with my head up. They called me obsolete, but I outlasted all of them.